Imagine walking away from a $15 million penthouse and a billionaire husband while 7 months pregnant. Isabella Sterling did just that. With only a suitcase and a secret plan she had crafted for 18 months, she left behind a life of luxury for a chance to save herself. This is the story of a woman who finally realized her worth, a powerful man who learned his lesson far too late, and the other woman who thought she had won. If you have ever felt taken for granted, this story will show you the incredible power of walking away. What Isabella did next will absolutely shock you. On a quiet Monday morning, the security camera showed the time was 5:47 as Isabella Sterling walked out of her gilded cage forever. This story will teach you the most powerful lesson every woman needs to hear. You do not need a prince to rescue you. You have the strength to save yourself. And sometimes, walking away from everything is the bravest thing you will ever do. If you have ever felt invisible in your own life, trapped in a beautiful prison, or wondered if you deserve more, stay until the end. This story might just change the way you see yourself. For 6 years, she had called the Manhattan Tower home, but now she left with a single bag in hand. She offered the doorman, Marcus, a sad smile that he would remember for years, then slipped into a yellow cab and vanished into the city. 2 hours later, her husband, Richard Sterling, woke up alone. He reached for his wife, but his hand only found cold, empty sheets. In 6 years of marriage, Isabella was always there in the morning. A strange silence filled the massive apartment. Richard called her name, but only his own voice echoed back. He searched their home with a growing sense of dread, noticing her toothbrush was gone from the bathroom. Then he saw it. On the marble kitchen island was a single sheet of her personal stationery. The note was short and devastating. It said, "I am gone. Please do not look for me. Our son deserves a mother who knows her own name." Next to the note was her wedding ring, a flawless 3-carat diamond that now looked meaningless. His mind raced as he tried to understand her words. He called her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. He tried her mother, Eleanor, but her voicemail cheerfully announced she was on a 2-month cruise and completely unreachable. The timing was a punch to the gut. Richard collapsed against the island, clutching the note. For the first time in his life, Perrault, the powerful billionaire, felt true, helpless fear. Let me tell you how it came to this. Just 48 hours earlier, Isabella had woken up to another one of his cold, efficient notes on the pillow beside her. It simply said, "Early meeting, back late, R." No affection, no concern for her or their unborn child, just business. As she moved through the silent penthouse, one hand resting on her stomach, her baby kicked, as if to remind her she was not truly alone. She was scrolling through a society blog when a headline caught her eye. It was a photo of Richard at a gallery opening, laughing with a stunning redhead in an emerald dress. The woman was Chloe Winters, an architect working on his new project. They looked intimate, sharing a secret world that Isabella was not a part of. That is when Isabella saw something on her own nightstand. It was a single emerald earring, a perfect match to the one Chloe was wearing in the photo. It had been left there carelessly, or maybe it was a deliberate warning. This was the third piece of evidence she had found in recent months. But instead of anger or pain, she just felt tired. She looked at her reflection, a perfectly polished wife who felt completely empty inside. She did not recognize that woman anymore, but that was all about to change. Isabella had been planning her escape for 18 months. In 48 hours, Mrs. Sterling would simply cease to exist. Across town, Chloe Winters painted her nails and bragged to a friend on the phone. "He promised he will tell her after the big deal closes," Chloe said with confidence. "She's just the incubator. I am the partner." On her computer, she had a folder filled with photos of Isabella, whom she dismissed as simple decoration. Chloe had a document titled Operation Sterling. To her, Richard was not a man to love. He was an acquisition, the final step in her ambitious plan to conquer the world. Chloe's plan was a masterpiece of quiet cruelty. Week 1, she would make Isabella feel utterly alone. By week 6, she would be photographed with Isabella's husband in a stunning green dress. Chloe believed every queen eventually gets dethroned, but she had no idea that the queen had already left the castle. The throne she was fighting for was empty. To understand how it all went so wrong, we have to go back 8 years, to the moment Richard Sterling first decided Isabella Marlowe would belong to him. 8 years earlier, Isabella was a fighter. At 24 years old, she was a lawyer in a tiny Brooklyn office, defending people who could not afford justice. She loved her work. One afternoon, a young mother named Maria sat across from her, terrified of being evicted. Isabella took her hand and promised to fight for her family, and she won. Standing in that courtroom, Isabella dismantled the powerful landlord's case, saving a family's home. That very night, to make ends meet, Isabella worked a second job, catering a fancy charity gala. While carrying a tray of champagne, she accidentally collided with a man named Richard Sterling. The drink spilled all over his expensive suit. He barely seemed to notice the stain. Instead, his eyes were locked on her with an intensity that took her breath away. He simply said, "I am Richard." He looked at her simple server's uniform and told her she did not belong in it. He said she belonged in an elegant gown as a guest. Isabella pushed back, telling him that not everyone measures their life by money. Intrigued, Richard asked her to dinner so he could prove her wrong. Against her better judgment, she agreed to just one dinner. But one dinner turned into a fairy tale romance. He seemed to truly understand her, buying her law books instead of expensive jewelry. He even charmed her tough-as-nails mother, Eleanor. But her mom saw a warning. She told Isabella, "Make sure he still sees the real you in 5 years." 6 months later, Richard proposed. Their wedding was a dream, but Isabella had no idea she was trading her life for a gilded cage. The dream slowly became a nightmare. In year 1, Richard missed hearing she had passed her bar exam because he was closing a business deal. In year 2, he convinced her to turn down her dream job at the American Civil Liberties Union. He told her that supporting his career was more important. By year 4, Isabella had stopped talking about her own dreams because Richard had long stopped asking about them. In year 5, she became pregnant. When she told him the news, he did not say, "Our baby." He said, "Finally, an heir." By year 6, she was just a ghost in her own home. Then, while 7 months pregnant, she found a hotel receipt in his coat from a night he claimed to be working late. A quiet phone call confirmed her worst fears. Sitting alone in her closet, Isabella finally stopped crying, and instead, she started to plan. For 18 long months, Isabella had been meticulously planning her escape from a gilded cage. It all started with a single page in a legal pad labeled Exit Strategy. To her husband, Richard, she was practically invisible. A beautiful piece of art in their Manhattan penthouse. But Isabella used that invisibility as a weapon. Every single day, she withdrew $500, the maximum limit, from the ATM. She would get small amounts of cash back at the grocery store. She hid the growing pile of money in places a man like Richard would never look. She even opened a secret bank account far away in Brooklyn. The woman at the bank seemed to understand completely. When Isabella requested the account be in her name only, the banker simply nodded and said, "I understand." Isabella was not just running away. She was being reborn as Anna Marlowe. Using a burner phone and skills she learned years ago, she secured a new identity. But then, a surprise changed everything. She was pregnant. When she told Richard, he didn't talk about their child. He talked about an heir. That single word confirmed her greatest fears. Her son would not be a person to him, but a possession. The escape plan became urgent. She packed one small suitcase with items from her old life before she became Mrs. Sterling. There was an old hoodie, photos from her ultrasound, and her mother's locket. She called her mom on the burner phone. "Mom, if I disappear, please do not look for me. I am safe." Her mother was quiet for a moment, then asked what was wrong. "Everything," Isabella said, "but I am fixing it." Her mother's final words were, "I am proud of you." 2 weeks before she planned to leave, Isabella sat alone at her final doctor's appointment. Richard was supposed to be there. Instead, he sent a text message just 15 minutes before. It said, "Cannot make it. Closing a big deal. You understand?" There was no apology. As the doctor showed Isabella the ultrasound, he asked, "Where's Dad?" "Working," she replied, the word feeling like poison. "Always working." When the doctor announced it was a healthy boy, Isabella touched the screen and whispered, "Hi, baby. I am your mom, and I promise you will know what real love feels like." That very night, Richard took his assistant, Chloe, to the same restaurant where he had proposed to Isabella. They celebrated the new business deal, their talk filled with plans that had no room for a wife and a new baby. "When are you telling her?" Chloe asked. Richard's smile was cold. "After the deal closes. The prenup is airtight. She will get nothing." He was so sure of himself, so certain she would just leave quietly. "And what if she does not?" Chloe challenged. Richard just smiled. "Then my lawyers will make her wish she had." They toasted to their new beginning, completely unaware that across town, Isabella was finalizing her own. Tomorrow she would make Richard one last dinner. She would look at him one final time, and then, before the sun came up, she would vanish. Unseen by Richard and Chloe at the restaurant, a board member named Robert Sinclair watched them. Robert had known Richard for years and had seen how Isabella's bright spirit had faded. He saw the way Richard was with Chloe and felt a deep sadness for his wife at home. He considered calling Isabella to warn her, but he knew she already understood her situation. He just hoped she had the strength to save herself. The final pieces were moving into place. In less than 48 hours, Isabella Sterling would be gone forever. At 10 o'clock on Saturday night, a 7 months pregnant Isabella stood in her kitchen. She was making coq au vin, Richard's favorite meal, the same dish she had made for him on their honeymoon in Paris. She had sent all the staff home for the night, needing to be alone for this final goodbye. The whole apartment smelled of wine and herbs, a bittersweet reminder of a happier time. Richard arrived home late, smelling of another woman's perfume. He walked right past her, his phone glued to his ear as he talked business with Chloe. Isabella placed his dinner on the table without a word. He barely glanced at her. She watched him eat, listening as he discussed contracts and deadlines. He was in a world where she had become nothing more than a ghost. He took a bite and looked up. "This is good," he said. Isabella replied, "It is coq au vin, from our Paris trip." Richard's face was blank. He had no memory of that special trip, of that meal, of the life they once shared. In that moment, she knew her decision was the right one. He had not just forgotten about her, he had deleted their entire history together. After he went to his study, she walked through the silent penthouse one last time, saying goodbye to the beautiful prison she had once called home. This beautiful prison was no place for her baby. Whispering a promise of a better life, Isabella grabbed her packed suitcase at 1 in the morning. Her hand shook as a phone buzzed, lighting up her husband Richard's face. It was a text from a woman named Chloe. Richard stirred and mumbled, "What are you doing?" Isabella froze, then lied about organizing the closet. He told her to take a sleeping pill and immediately fell back asleep, completely oblivious. Richard never imagined she would leave. People like him were never abandoned. After her heart finally stopped pounding, Isabella waited until 4:30 in the morning. Dressed in an old hoodie, she saw her true self in the mirror again, not the polished Mrs. Sterling. After a final, heartbreaking glance at the empty nursery, she left a simple note on the kitchen counter that read, "I am gone. Please do not look for me." She added that her son deserved a mother who knew her own name, placing her huge diamond ring on the note. She took only a single photograph from their honeymoon, a reminder of the woman she used to be. At 4:45, she entered the elevator, leaving Mrs. Sterling behind and becoming Anna Marlowe. But in the lobby, a young doorman she did not know looked up in surprise. "Mrs. Sterling, you are out early." Thinking fast, she claimed she was making a surprise visit to a friend. Tom, the doorman, seemed to see right through her lie, especially after she sharply refused his offer to call her driver. Forcing a smile, she said a cab was already on its way. After a tense moment, he simply wished her a safe trip. She walked out into the New York morning, got into a yellow cab, and told the driver, "Port Authority Bus Terminal." Inside, she paid cash for a one-way ticket to Chicago, leaving no paper trail. Her heart leaped when she saw her own face on a magazine cover at a newsstand. A businessman stared, about to ask if she was the woman in the photo. Just then, her bus to Gate 12 was called. Isabella ran as fast as her pregnant body would allow and did not stop until she was hidden in the back row. As the bus pulled away, Isabella finally let herself cry. The kind, older woman next to her understood immediately. "Running from something, honey?" she asked, sharing that she had done the same thing 30 years ago. When Isabella worried she was making a mistake, the woman simply smiled and asked, "What if you are not?" As the bus headed west, Anna Marlowe was born, and Richard Sterling slept on. Completely unaware, his perfect world had already ended. She thought about a future in her own name, maybe at a small bookstore in Oregon. As Anna Marlowe watched the sunrise of her new life, Richard Sterling's alarm went off at 7:52. He reached for his wife, a habit from 6 years of marriage, but only felt cold, empty sheets. Isabella had never once failed to be there when he woke. Her absence was the first sign that his perfectly ordered world had shattered. How does a woman vanish from a penthouse, leaving a powerful husband and a cryptic note? This is the story of Isabella, a woman who chose to reclaim her life instead of being a rich man's trophy. Her husband, Richard Sterling, woke up to an empty bed. He found her closet untouched, but her toothbrush was gone. On the kitchen island, a note lay next to her wedding ring. It said, "I am gone. Our son deserves a mother who knows her own name." The words made no sense to him. Where could she be? Her name was Sterling. He called her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Her mother's phone did the same, announcing a 2-month cruise. This was all too perfect, too planned. The doorman confirmed she left at 5:30 that morning with a suitcase, claiming to visit a friend. The doorman's final word chilled Richard to the bone. She seemed calm. This wasn't a panicked escape. It was a calculated disappearance. Richard collapsed against the kitchen island, clutching the note. His mistress, Chloe, let herself in at 9, carrying coffee. She found him on the floor, a broken man. He handed her the note without a word. Chloe's eyes widened with a flicker of triumph before she masked it with concern. "Gone?" she asked, pretending to be shocked. "What does she mean, gone?" "She took our son and disappeared," Richard said, his voice empty. Chloe saw her chance. This was the moment she had been working towards. She put a hand on his arm and suggested that pregnancy hormones might have made Isabella unstable. "We should keep this quiet," Chloe urged. "If the press finds out, it could destroy her reputation." She was only protecting her own interests. But Richard, lost in his grief, agreed. But Isabella wasn't having a breakdown. She was executing a plan. Across town, an investigator was already looking at files she had prepared. These files detailed how Richard's company harassed and displaced poor families. Richard hired his own investigator, a former detective named Frank Harrison. Harrison quickly uncovered a secret bank account Isabella opened 18 months ago. She had saved over $182,000. The surprises kept coming. Harrison discovered she bought a bus ticket with cash, wearing a disguise. "Mere Sterling, this was planned like a military operation," he said. "She has been preparing to leave you for over a year." The words stunned Richard. While he was having an affair with Chloe, his wife was plotting her escape. "Find her," Richard demanded. But Harrison warned him that people this prepared are nearly impossible to find. The investigation revealed Isabella's secret life. She had kept her old apartment in Brooklyn and set up mailboxes across the country. Richard felt like he was chasing a ghost. One night, while parked outside her old building, a homeless man approached his car. "I lost my wife," Richard confessed. The man replied, "Maybe she lost you first." Those words hit Richard hard. He finally saw how he had smothered her spirit, turning her into a silent, decorative object. On day 12, a lead sent Richard to a small town in Missouri. The post office clerk remembered Isabella, but she had already left, forwarding her mail to Portland, Oregon. Richard screamed in his rental car, overwhelmed by rage and grief. Meanwhile, back in New York, Chloe was moving her things into the penthouse. She hired an architect to erase every trace of Isabella's style. "Mrs. Sterling is not coming back," she said with a confident smile. Imagine being treated like a prize, not a person. That was Isabella's life until she vanished, leaving her billionaire husband, Richard, to crumble. This is a story about breaking free and finding your true worth. What would you do to reclaim your life? While Richard fell apart, his mentor, Robert, was uncovering the cruel manipulations of Chloe, the woman plotting to take Isabella's place. At a pivotal board meeting, Richard was supposed to celebrate a huge deal. Instead, unshaven and exhausted, he stood before his company and completely lost his focus. The numbers on the screen meant nothing. All he could see was his wife's farewell note. A board member asked if Richard was okay. The question broke him. He started laughing, a raw, unhinged sound that silenced the room. He screamed that Isabella was gone, that he didn't know if his own son was even alive. He confessed he knew nothing. The powerful Richard Sterling, a titan of Manhattan real estate, staggered and grabbed the table for support. His empire meant nothing. He collapsed into his chair, sobbing like a lost child, consumed by guilt and fear for the woman he had driven away. He finally admitted he didn't even know if she was safe. The board members were horrified. This was a complete breakdown, not a victory celebration. Watching from the back, Chloe realized her mistake. The broken man sobbing in the chair was not the powerful partner she wanted. He was pathetic. Robert quickly adjourned the meeting. He told Richard a brutal truth, saying, "You never loved her. You only loved the idea of her." Richard was hospitalized for a severe psychiatric crisis. When Chloe visited, playing the role of the devoted partner, Richard finally saw her clearly. He saw someone who wanted his empire, not him, and he told her to get out. Her plans had turned to ash. 2,000 miles away in Oregon, a pregnant woman named Anna Marlowe stepped off a bus. She had very little money, but was finally free. She had escaped a life where she was just an accessory. Now she was focused on the new life she was building, one brave step at a time. Anna drove to the small coastal town of Astoria. The town was quiet and real, a world away from the glamour of Manhattan. But her relief turned to panic when every motel refused her cash. They all required a credit card and identification she didn't have. That night, she slept in the cramped back seat of an old car she bought for $800. Pregnant and alone, she cried quietly, promising her unborn son that she would figure things out. After 3 desperate days, Anna walked into a bookstore just to use the restroom. The shop was cozy, filled with the smell of old books. An older woman with sharp, kind eyes watched her from the counter. Her name was Margaret. Seeing Anna's distress, Margaret offered her a cup of tea. That simple act of kindness made Anna break down in tears. Margaret gently asked how long she had been sleeping in her car. Margaret then revealed she used to be a lawyer and said, "I know a woman on the run when I see one." Anna admitted she was not running from the law, but from someone who treated her like property. That was enough for Margaret. She offered Anna a small room above the bookstore in exchange for work. For the first time in 6 years, Anna had a space that was truly her own. She finally cried tears of relief and hope. Anna found safety in the routine of small-town life, though she tensed whenever anyone got too personal. The bookstore owner, Margaret, understood completely. She told Anna that small towns know when to mind their business, and it was clear Anna was not a threat. Still, nightmares of her old life in Manhattan haunted her sleep. One night, Margaret brought her tea, reassuring her that the feeling of being hunted would eventually fade. During a prenatal visit, Anna met Grace, another expectant mother with a warm Southern accent, who was just as direct and just as alone. Grace saw right through Anna's carefully constructed walls. She noticed the designer coat and the East Coast accent, recognizing a fellow woman on the run. For the first time in months, Anna felt seen, not as a possession, but as a person. They talked for hours, bonding over their shared fears and hopes of starting over. A month later, back at the bookstore, a pipe burst. Margaret called a local carpenter named James Morrison to fix the flood. James had kind eyes and a calm that instantly put Anna at ease. After fixing the sink, he insisted on helping her with heavy boxes, sensing her struggle. He spoke of his own life in Astoria, raising his young daughter, Lily, alone after his wife passed away. When he offered to build a handmade crib for her baby, free of charge, Anna was overwhelmed by his kindness. 2 weeks later, a terrible storm hit the coast, and Anna's water broke in the middle of the night. The storm had flooded the roads, making it impossible for an ambulance to reach her, but Anna was not alone. Grace arrived first, followed by Margaret, who had delivered her own daughter at home back in 1976. Then James appeared with a medical kit, remembering skills from a home birth class. Surrounded by these 3 new friends, Anna gave birth to a healthy baby boy, Leo, as the storm raged outside. In that moment, 3 strangers became her family. Margaret asked for the baby's name. Anna chose Leo, meaning lion, for his bravery. The following months were the happiest Anna had ever known. She worked with Leo, strapped to her chest, embraced by a town that offered support without asking questions. She and Grace raised their children together, their friendship growing deeper each day. James was always nearby, fixing things that were not broken, bringing food, and reading stories to Leo. One evening, James told her she was safe there and that he would wait for her, however long it took. On Leo's first birthday, the entire town celebrated with them on the beach. As Anna watched James with her son, her heart was finally full. That night, she sang Leo to sleep, and he said his first word, "Mum." She held him close, believing her new, peaceful life was permanent. But peace can be fragile. 1,800 miles away, an investigator hired by her husband, Richard Sterling, found a birth certificate that matched every detail. He immediately picked up the phone. At that same moment, Richard was in his therapist's office, finally confronting the cruelty that had driven his wife away. Sober for 16 months, he was slowly understanding how his ambition had destroyed his marriage. He told his therapist he had treated his wife like a piece of art he collected, never seeing the real person. Just then his phone rang. The investigator told him everything: the small town, the baby boy named Leo. The old Richard would have stormed in to take back what he considered his. But the man listening to that call was different. He knew now that true victory was not about possession, but about letting the person you love be free. Imagine being robbed of your child's first 18 months. That's the injustice Richard faced when he discovered his son was alive and well in Oregon. Ignoring his therapist's pleas, he flew across the country, a man on a mission to reclaim his family. But what he found shattered him. Outside a small-town bookstore, his ex-wife, Anna, pushed a stroller, laughing with another man. Then the little boy, who had Richard's own chin, pointed at the stranger and said a single soul-crushing word. "Da da." His son called another man Dad. Richard's world crumbled. He watched them in the park, a perfect family, the kind he had failed to create. That night, 18 months of sobriety went down the drain along with his patience. He called his lawyer with a single command: "Get me full custody of my son." His lawyer warned it would be a brutal fight, but Richard didn't care. He had the money and the power, and he was ready for war. The next morning, Richard walked into the bookstore. Anna saw him, and the color vanished from her face. She sent their son, Leo, upstairs with her friend Margaret. The silence was thick with years of anger. "Hello, Isabella," he began. "Don't call me that," she shot back. "I came for my son, the one you stole." Anna's fury erupted. "I saved him," she cried. "You were never there. You missed every doctor's visit, every single moment, because you were with her." "Don't you dare talk about what's fair," she warned. Richard was unmoved. He pulled out an envelope. "These are custody papers. I'm taking him back to New York." Anna's world tilted. "You have a fake name and a bookstore job," he said coldly. "I have a team of lawyers." "He has a father here," she pleaded, talking about James, "a man who tucks him in at night." "Not legally," Richard sneered. "He is my son, and I am taking him." Richard turned and left, leaving Anna to collapse in tears. The news hit their small town like a hurricane. The local paper painted Anna as a manipulative kidnapper who had lied to everyone. The community turned its back on her. Parents pulled their children from Leo's playgroup. Anna was ready to run again, but James stopped her. "He found you once," he said, taking her hands. "He will find you again. This time, you don't run. This time, you stand and you fight for our son." A powerful man tried to take a child from his mother, but he never expected her to fight back with a secret weapon. A retired lawyer ready for one last war. After 30 years and over 200 victories, Margaret was coming out of retirement to represent Anna for free. For 3 weeks, they prepared. Margaret gathered proof of Richard's neglect. While the town slowly learned that Anna had not run away, she had escaped. In court, Richard's team of 5 expensive lawyers faced off against Anna and Margaret. They painted Anna as a kidnapper who stole her son. Their goal was simple: to crush her and take the boy. Richard's lawyers presented a powerful case. They showed evidence of Anna's secret bank account and fake identification. They argued she had planned to vanish and deny Richard his parental rights from the start. Photos of her looking happy with James suggested she had moved on without a second thought. After 2 days, Anna felt hopeless, whispering to Margaret, that they were going to lose her son. Margaret simply squeezed her hand and said, "Trust me." On day 3, Anna took the stand and told the court why she left. Looking at Richard, she said, "I was disappearing." She described a lonely marriage where she was ignored and treated cruelly. Margaret presented phone records showing Richard had only called 3 times in 7 months. The lawyer's cross-examination was brutal, but Anna stood firm. She explained that Leo called another man Dada because that man was always there, and being present is what makes a father. Then, Margaret called a surprise witness, Richard's own sister, Sarah. She testified that when Richard learned he had a son, he said, "I'm going to have an heir," not, "I'm going to be a father." Sarah's words broke him. Richard stood up, ignoring his lawyers, and finally told the truth. He admitted his sister was right about everything. Looking at Anna, he confessed, "I didn't lose my wife, I suffocated her. I never deserved my son." With his voice trembling, he admitted she was right to run from him. In a stunning turn, Richard told the judge he was withdrawing his request. He no longer wanted to take Leo. He wanted to earn the right to be his father. The judge's ruling was clear. Anna would have primary custody of their son. Richard was granted supervised visits, but only if he attended therapy and parenting classes. Fatherhood, the judge said, is earned through presence, not by simply stating you are the father. At their first meeting, Richard brought expensive toys, but 2-year-old Leo hid behind his mother, wanting nothing to do with the stranger. The fancy gifts meant nothing. Defeated, Richard asked what he should do. A friend told him to put the toys away and just sit on the floor. So, he did. Leo, who was playing with a simple cardboard box, eventually let Richard join him in building a spaceship. For the next hour, they played. When the visit ended, Leo gave him a small wave. It was not much, but it was a start. It was progress. Richard kept showing up twice a week, every week. He learned to read children's books and build towers just to see them get knocked down. He moved from a penthouse in the city to a small house with a backyard near his son. He stepped away from his company and started attending parenting classes. He discovered that showing up was more important than anything money could buy. 6 months later, Richard had earned unsupervised visits. One morning, Leo called him Daddy Richard, a title that brought tears to Richard's eyes. Anna watched him change, and while it didn't erase the past, it offered hope for the future. She saw Richard and James, the 2 men who loved her son, become friends. People can change, she realized, if they truly want to. And that change could define everything that was to come. Then James looked her in the eyes. "I love you, Anna. I love Leo. Marry me." And in that moment, she knew she was home. 3 years later, they were married on the beach. Leo was the ring bearer. In a nearby chair, a changed Richard watched them, genuinely happy with his new girlfriend. He later thanked Anna for not giving up on him. Leo ran to both men, yelling, "Daddies, come play." And they both did. 2 fathers, both loved, both present. Anna finally felt free. She had gone from being a possession in a gilded cage to a real person. But her story wasn't the only one that changed. 3 years after the trial, Chloe Winter stood outside Anna's new law office. Chloe was the woman Richard had cheated with, the one who helped drive Anna away. Now she was a ghost of her former self. Richard had fired her, and the industry had blacklisted her. She had lost her apartment, her career, her entire life. She saw an article about Anna, now a successful lawyer, and felt a sliver of hope. When Anna came outside with a 5-year-old Leo, Chloe stepped forward. "Anna, please, I just need 5 minutes." Anna sent her son inside. "You have 2, she said, her face impossible to read. Chloe's desperate story tumbled out. The poverty, the failure, the shame. "I lost everything," she finished. Anna's voice was calm. And you want me to feel sorry for you? No, Chloe whispered. I want you to understand we just wanted the same thing. Years later, a defeated Chloe found Anna, who was now a thriving business owner. Chloe admitted she had been wrong, that she had chosen a cruel path to get what she wanted. She told Anna that leaving took incredible courage. Anna looked at the broken woman before her, not with hatred, but with pity. Instead of revenge, Anna offered her a chance at redemption. She told Chloe about a women's shelter that needed a volunteer architect. She said, "Someone helped me when I had nothing. Now you have a chance to become someone different." Chloe cried that she did not deserve a second chance. Anna agreed, but told her to take it anyway, to help the next woman who might be in trouble. Weeks later, Chloe was designing a new women's shelter. The director told her, "Anna Marlowe recommended you. She said you were worth taking a chance on." Vowing to earn that trust, Chloe began her new life. That evening, Anna sat at a beach bonfire, surrounded by her new, loving family. 3 years later, Anna watched her son, Leo, roast marshmallows with their friends. This was her new life, her real family. Her friend Grace sat beside her. 3 years ago, you were sleeping in your car, Grace said gently. It feels like a different lifetime, Anna replied. That is because you are a different person now. Anna smiled and shook her head. No, I am the same person I always was. I just found her again. Richard, who was also there, walked over. He had changed, too. He watched his son playing happily. He is a great kid, Richard said quietly. You did that. Anna looked at the joyful scene around her. Can I ask you something? Richard said. Do you ever regret leaving? Anna looked at her son, at her friends, at the life she had built. Not for 1 second, she said. I regret that I had to leave, but I do not regret the decision. Richard nodded, his eyes filled with sadness. I do, he said. I regret everything. Imagine being trapped in a life that looks perfect, but feels like a cage. That was Anna's reality. Now, she's the one helping others find the key. This is a story about how the deepest wounds can become our greatest strengths. So stick around to see how one brave woman turned her escape into a lifeline for others. At a beach bonfire, surrounded by a family she had built, Anna finally felt at home. Leo, her son, called out to his two dads, a testament to their blended and beautiful life. This peace was real, earned through hardship, unlike the hollow quiet of her former penthouse. Margaret, a dear friend, raised her mug in a silent toast, a tribute to women who saved themselves. Anna smiled, her heart full. She had chosen truth over comfort, and in doing so, had found herself. The next morning, in her own law office, Anna looked out at the very street where she once slept in her car. Her day was filled with helping people in situations she knew all too well. A young woman named Jessica walked in, her fear barely concealed behind a bruised eye and the toddler on her hip. In a hushed voice, she said, I need to disappear. I don't know how. Anna understood completely. She retrieved a framed piece of paper from a shelf. It was a simple note she had written 5 years earlier. I am gone. Please do not look for me. She showed it to Jessica. This was mine, Anna explained. It worked. For the next 2 hours, Anna laid out a detailed exit strategy for Jessica. She explained how to secure funds, establish a new identity, and find safe communities. The first night is the hardest, Anna told her, her voice gentle but firm. But you are not running away. You're running toward a new life. Jessica worried he might find her. Anna reassured her. You save yourself, but you do not have to do it alone. You will have people to protect you. Anna then gave her a folder filled with resources and her personal phone number. "How much do I owe you?" Jessica asked, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Nothing," Anna replied. "Someone helped me for free. Now, I am just passing it on." Later that day, Anna watched her son Leo play soccer. Her chosen family filled the stands, cheering loudly when Leo accidentally scored a goal for the wrong team. Everyone, including Leo, erupted in laughter. In that moment, watching her son enjoy his wonderfully imperfect childhood, Anna knew her victory was complete. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving, and she was helping others do the same. Have you ever felt trapped in a life that looked perfect but felt empty? This is the story of a woman who walked away from a gilded cage to find real freedom, and now she spends her life helping others do the same. After a game, Leo sat happily between his two fathers, trying to turn his one scoop of ice cream into a sundae, when both James and Richard sided with his mom. Anna, Leo sighed dramatically. As they walked, Richard turned to Anna. "I'm not just thanking you for forgiveness," he said. "I'm thanking you for showing me what true family looks like." He gestured toward their group, kids laughing, adults chatting. "You built this. I grew up with obligation, but you showed me what real wealth is." "You have thanked me by becoming a man Leo can be proud of," Anna replied softly. That night, she tucked Leo into bed in their cozy, simple home. "Tell me the story, Mama," he whispered, "the one about when you were brave." Anna smiled, stroking his hair. Once upon a time, a woman felt very small in a huge, beautiful castle. But when she learned a baby was coming, she found her courage. Before sunrise, she left that castle on a great adventure to find a place where they could both be free. "And she found Astoria," Leo finished sleepily. "She found our family. And Daddy Richard found us too, and learned how to be brave." "I am glad you were brave, Mama," Anna whispered. "Me too." Later, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica, a woman she had helped. "I did it. I left. I am scared, but I am free," Anna replied. "You will be okay. When you are ready, you will help the next woman. That is how we win." She remembered being Isabella Sterling, a trophy wife who was disappearing. Leaving felt like failure then, but now she knew it was the bravest thing she had ever done. Sometimes walking away is the only way to find yourself. Anna had left behind wealth and security, but she found everything that truly mattered: purpose, community, and unconditional love. The past was fixed, but the future was hers to write. She was writing it one woman at a time, teaching them the lesson she learned on a dark bus ride across the country. You are stronger than you know, and you deserve to take up space in your own life. Run toward freedom, and you will find people waiting to help. 5 years after Isabella Sterling vanished from New York, Anna Marlowe watched her son Leo build a sandcastle in Astoria. Her friend Margaret sat beside her, knitting. "Any regrets?" she asked. Anna watched Leo laugh as a wave washed his castle away, only to start rebuilding immediately. "Not a single one," Anna said. "That woman you helped, Jessica, she made it to Montana safely," Margaret shared. Over the last 5 years, Anna had helped 43 women disappear into new, safer lives. Her private journal held their first names, a record of their courage. Her law practice, which she privately called her mission, had grown. She was now married to James, a kind furniture maker, and they had a small wedding on the beach 2 years ago. Her mother, Eleanor, now visited often and had become close friends with Margaret, bonding over their shared stories of survival. "Lunch is ready," James said, kissing her head. "Your mom called. She is visiting for 2 weeks for Leo's birthday." Leo overheard and ran over, excited for his grandma's visit. That afternoon, Richard arrived to pick up Leo for the weekend. He had moved to Portland, and his new wife, Jennifer, was pregnant. In a moment that brought Anna to tears, They had asked Anna and James to be the baby's godparents. As her son drove off, happy and secure in the love of his sprawling, unconventional family, James wrapped his arm around her. "You okay?" he asked. Anna leaned into him, feeling a deep sense of peace. "Yes," she said, just thinking how wonderfully different life is now. That evening, Anna spoke at Haven House, a women's shelter designed by a woman from her past, Chloe. The building was a refuge for women fleeing violent homes. Anna and Chloe were not friends, but they shared a purpose. Looking at the 20 women in the room, Anna began her story. She told them how 5 years ago she was just like them, terrified and unsure. Her marriage had become a prison, and her pregnancy gave her the courage to escape. The first 3 months were the hardest she had ever known. She admitted that she slept in her car and cried every single night. But she kept going because kind people helped her. When one woman asked how she knew it was the right choice, Anna had a simple answer. The moment her son was born, she knew she would rather be poor and free than rich and trapped. Another woman tearfully asked, "What if he finds me?" Anna reassured her, "You will have a community to protect you. You are not alone. That is the most important lesson." Later that night, Anna drove home along the dark coast. She thought about all the people she used to be, from a hopeful law student to a ghost in a penthouse. Now she was a survivor, built from all those broken and rebuilt pieces. At home, her partner James was waiting. He told her she was changing lives. Anna disagreed, saying she only showed them what was possible. They were the ones doing the hard work. James pulled her close and called her remarkable. She smiled, feeling free in her new name, Anna Marlowe. That night, she dreamed of leaving her old life behind and of all the women she had helped find their own freedom. She also dreamed of the note she left, the simple words that saved her life. "I am gone. Please do not look for me." The next morning, her 5-year-old son, Leo, woke her up, excited for pancakes. The three of them made breakfast together, a perfectly normal scene she had fought so hard for. Later, as Anna walked to her law office, she updated her private journal. She had helped 43 women find their freedom. At 10 o'clock, number 44 was scheduled to arrive. A woman named Sarah, who had driven 5 hours to ask one question: "Is escape possible?" Anna looked at the framed note on her wall and knew exactly what to say. The door opened, and Sarah walked in. "7 years ago, I arrived in this town with nothing but a suitcase and overwhelming fear. I slept in my car, pregnant and alone." Anna's voice was steady as she spoke to the packed room. The launch of her Marlowe Foundation had drawn everyone, even the mayor. She stood at the podium, expecting her second child, and looked at her new family in the front row. Behind her, a banner promised legal defense for women. "I am here tonight," she said, "because this community saved me. And now it is my turn to give back. Our foundation will give women everything I needed back then. We will provide legal help, safe relocations, and job training. But healing is not a one-sided street. That is why I want to announce our first scholarship." Anna paused, then looked toward her ex-husband. "It is for the men who are willing to change. We are calling it the Richard Sterling Transformation Scholarship. I have learned that hurt people, Anna finished, but healed people can heal others." Across the room, Richard's eyes were wet with tears. Later, Anna stood watching the river when Chloe approached her. "What you did was generous," Chloe said quietly. "It was honest," Anna replied. "Richard was not the real villain in my story. He was just a broken man who broke me. The system was the true villain. I was part of that system," Chloe admitted. "I am truly sorry." "I am not rich or important anymore," Chloe answered. "But I design shelters where women can be safe. So, yes, I think I am finally happy." Anna smiled. Do you ever miss the old life? Chloe asked. Not for a second, Anna said. I miss the woman I used to be, but she is back now. She has a family that loves her and work that matters. Thank you, Chloe said, for giving me a chance to be better. You did that on your own, Anna told her. I just opened a door. Her daughter, Sarah Grace Marlowe, arrived on a quiet spring afternoon. When 7-year-old Leo met his sister, he asked, Did you love me this much when I was little? More, Anna told him. I loved you so much, I walked away from everything for you. Because love is brave? He whispered. Yes, my love. Love is brave. Richard visited the next day. He brought a wooden cradle he had made. I missed all of this with Leo, he said quietly. I am just so grateful. You have let me earn my way back. He looked at the baby. You named her Sarah, after my sister? Richard asked in disbelief. Anna nodded. Your sister chose to tell the truth, and that took incredible courage. Our daughter deserved a name that means courage. Thank you, Richard whispered. Later that night, Anna held her daughter close. Your brother was born in a storm, she said softly, but you were born in peace. That is what happens when you are brave enough to save yourself. 5 years passed. A director wanted to make a documentary about her journey. That evening, she called Richard. They talked like old friends now, about their children and their lives. He wants to tell my story, she said. Will you be Isabella Sterling? He asked. Anna thought for a moment. I have not been that person in 12 years. I barely remember what she looked like. She looked sad, Richard said softly. Anna Marlowe does not look sad. No, Anna agreed. She looks free. 10 years ago, a billionaire's wife named Isabella Sterling disappeared, becoming a Manhattan urban legend. But the truth was far more powerful. That woman is now Anna Marlowe, and she runs the most successful women's advocacy firm on the West Coast. A documentary about her work, called The Women Who Walk Away, just won a major award, sparking a national conversation about the courage it takes to leave. After a private screening, her 14-year-old son, Leo, told her, You're really brave, Mom. Anna corrected him gently. I was terrified, but I did it anyway. That is all bravery is. Her young daughter, Sarah, then declared she would help women too, just like her mom. This is the story of how choosing to save yourself can end up saving hundreds of others. If you believe in the power of a fresh start, please share this story. Anna's new life created surprising ripples. Her foundation has now helped over 300 women find safety. The man she escaped, Richard Sterling, had his own transformation. He started a foundation for men's mental health and is now a present father to their children. Even the mistress, Chloe Winters, found a new purpose. She became a renowned architect, designing women's shelters, and sends Anna a thank you card every year. The card thanks her for the destruction that led to her own reconstruction. Anna's support system is stronger than ever. Margaret, the bookstore owner who first helped her, wrote a best-selling memoir. Her best friend, Grace, runs the foundation's operations, and James, the quiet furniture maker, has built over 200 cradles, one for every baby born to a woman they helped. On the 10th anniversary of her escape, Anna stood alone on a beach, remembering the terror and hope of that first day. She recalled sleeping in her car, the kindness of strangers, and giving birth to Leo during a storm. Every difficult step had led her to this moment of peace. Then her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. The message read, I heard about your work. I am 7 months pregnant and I need to disappear. Can you show me how? Anna smiled and typed back, Yes. Come to my office tomorrow at 10. You are not alone. I promise. As the sun set, she watched the unstoppable waves. They were just like the women she helped, and like the courage it takes to walk away and save yourself. The trophy wife vanished a decade ago, but Anna Marlowe, and every woman brave enough to claim her own name, is still walking toward freedom. Remember this: your worth is not measured by the size of your house, the balance in your bank account, or the man standing beside you. Your worth is measured by the courage to know your own name and the strength to fight for the life you deserve. Isabella walked away with nothing but a suitcase and her unborn child. 10 years later, she has saved over 300 women. That is the ripple effect of one brave choice. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about someone who needs to hear this message, please share it. Hit that like button, leave a comment telling me what part moved you the most, and subscribe so you never miss another story that reminds you of your own strength. And if you are out there right now, feeling trapped, feeling small, feeling like no one sees you, hear me. You are stronger than you know. You deserve to take up space in your own life. Your new chapter is waiting. This content was carefully researched, crafted, and edited by hand to bring you meaning and inspiration. Every story we tell is designed to remind you that you are never alone, and that courage lives inside you, waiting for the moment you choose to set it free.